So I know that some of you did have issues with the actual downloading of the WAMP server itself. So if you look at my screen at the moment, you'll see the URL I'm on, wampserver.com/en for English. If you open that up on your screen and scroll down to downloads, you will have two versions of WAMP on here. There's a 64-bit and a 32-bit. Typically, if you're on Windows 7 or up, you can safely download the 64-bit version of the WAMP server. If you are unsure on if you're on a 64-bit operating system or a 32-bit, the 32-bit version will always work for you. So if you have an older machine, or if you're, say, for any reason locked down on a 32-bit operating system, then the 32-bit version will be perfect for you. So if you can get that downloaded and installed, it will normally install into one of two folders. So it'll either go to C WAMP, or it'll go into C WAMP 64. And the second thing then that we want is Notepad++. So this is for Windows, and it is a free text editor, more of an advanced version of Notepad that you would normally use. And the main advantage of this is that it actually highlights the syntax in, say, your HTML or your CSS or your jQuery or PHP or SQL when we start moving on to more advanced languages further down the line. But this is a catch-all tool that you will likely use for the rest of your days as a developer. So you want this link here, Notepad++ 32-bit x86, and that's an installer. When that installs, an icon will appear on your desktop. So while you are downloading those and getting them installed, and obviously do ask any questions if you need assistance, we're all here to help you with this. But while you are getting it installed, we'll just run through a very brief history of the web, HTML, and CSS. So the web, not invented by Al Gore, unfortunately. The honor goes to a man called Tim Berners-Lee. He invented this while he was working with CERN in 1989. So the big thing with HTML at the time was that it was mostly intended for, sharing documents, sharing research, things like that. Photos would have to wait a little while before that came into any mainstream, and social networks like MySpace and Facebook came a very long time after that once the language had matured. But back in the early days, we had various people that kind of argued over how HTML should work, and later arguing how CSS should work on top of that. Tim Berners-Lee attempted to resolve this by building what was called W3C. That's the World Wide Web Consortium. In short, setting a standardization and a rule set for how HTML was to be rendered in a browser. So when you're writing HTML to make a web page, actually the browser that is inferring what you're writing actually means when it comes onto the screen for a user. So Internet Explorer was one of the first browsers that decided it didn't want to really play any part in the W3C. It thought that it could develop this technology for itself. And well, they thought that, I suppose innocently enough, that they being Microsoft were the best people to push it forward with with whatever they deemed was required or necessary in HTML. Other browsers then started lagging behind as Microsoft were bundling Internet Explorer with versions of Windows 95 and up. Most people only knew Internet Explorer. Other browsers like Netscape Navigator and Mosaic tended to fall by the wayside as people didn't see the need in having two browsers at the time, and because most websites were designed with the Internet Explorer rules in mind, well, people didn't see much of a need for developing it twice to include Netscape and other browsers on top of that. However, once Netscape formed into Mozilla, released Mozilla Firefox, and that was where the tide started to change a little bit. People started downloading Firefox. It got up to about 15–20% market share, and at that point then we kind of saw the tipping point for W3C, where it became truly relevant again, where these were the rules being followed, and this is what made websites look good and run fast on PCs, and obviously on Mac devices and soon to be mobile devices. Google Chrome followed suit with that. The browser followed all of the rules that were set down by W3C, and both Google and Mozilla, of course, are part of the W3C Foundation. later joined by Microsoft on that. So once these two browsers rose to prominence, we had a great thing in computer science in that we didn't have to anymore develop separate versions of websites for separate browsers or separate devices. We finally had kind of a medium that was becoming homogeneous for us to use. And as the years went on, and Microsoft did follow suit and eventually released Microsoft Edge, which is their W3C compliant browser on the market at the moment, we had really a big weight lifted off our shoulders when it came to both developing and learning how to develop. A lot of people that would have studied web development back in the early 2000s and even kind of going towards the 2010 years and so on, we always had to learn how to build our websites to be compatible with Internet Explorer 6, with 7. 8 was normally okay, and 9 was where things usually worked mostly without additional time spent on development. But now that there is a homogeneous tool set, the scope for us to actually develop is a lot easier now. You will be learning one version of HTML, one version of CSS, and this will work on every browser for you. So when you're developing, you don't have to worry about whoever is using your website with whatever browser. If the browser is following the rules, which about 99% of browsers on the market now do, then you will not have any issues in troubleshooting on any bugs with your website. And I can tell you, while I was working with Microsoft, we were still using Internet Explorer 6. So a lot of you could imagine with a browser that is over a decade old at this point, trying to develop for that while also trying to cater to the modern society, which we're using brand new browsers like Chrome, Firefox, the industry standard. It added a lot to the development time at Microsoft that any tool we built which relied on Internet Explorer had to be compatible with the older versions such as Internet Explorer 6 and in some cases even going back to Internet Explorer 5. So we're definitely at an excellent point in time right now to begin learning HTML and CSS, that we are able to skip past all of the arguments that went on for nearly 2 decades and finally be able to develop without fear of not supporting any devices. The web is our universal platform for development, and this is where we can finally jump into it, start developing, and not have to worry about how it will appear in another browser or anything like that. So hopefully with that brief history lesson out of the way, we have got WAMP and we have got Notepad++ installed. Let's see, I have a question. Okay, so you're seeing a link that takes you to a page in French. So if you remember, we put a /en after our WAMP server, and that is for the English version of the website. So WAMP actually has its majority developer base in France. It also has some developers in Russia. So the default language to use is French. So if you use the URL at the top here, type in a /en/ you will get the website in English. And the download links are actually the same either way on it. So, all right, so are we ready to move on with this, James, do you think, or should we allow a little bit of time for any questions, or should we wait for any downloads?
I think probably given the time, I think, yeah, let's get started.
Okay, great. So if you could all open up Internet Explorer for me, and James, if you could do me one favor there, if any questions come in that need myself to take a quick eye on them or anything like that, could you let me know?
Of course, yeah, yeah.
Perfect, perfect. So if you open up Notepad++ for me, and now this can be done with your standard Notepad tool or with WordPad if that's what you're using at the moment. But again, Notepad++ is the best way to develop for HTML and CSS, especially when we're starting off. The syntax really helps on here. Now we want to save this in our WAMP folder. So if we go back up, we'll see we're in WAMP. So you might need to navigate to see WAMP. I'm going to www, and we're going to make a new folder. So the folder we're just going to call it. To start off with, we're going to show you how we can build what's a basic news website. So we're going to call the folder news. Inside it, we want to save this as an index.html. Now, if you look through here, you'll see a lot of different types of files. HTML will be in there, but if you want to be safe, just put in all types, and in inverted commas, just type in index.html. That might be a little small for you there. on the screen I'm using. So I'll write that again in the actual Notepad file. So once you're ready, you hit save on that. We'll increase the text size on here. And that is the HTML or the file name that we want to use for our HTML. So index.html.
Sorry to
So
interrupt, Owen. Can I
yeah,
quickly ask attendees if you're still downloading WAMP? If you're struggling, please just say it in the comments, because in the questions rather, because I probably didn't give people a chance there. But if enough people are ready, then we'll go ahead.
yeah. If we want to take a quick poll on users or anything like that, I've no problem waiting for a couple of minutes.
Uh, I think at the minute, because some people are at work, so they're watching. We've got one or two still downloading. Um, I
Okay.
think we'll go
Well,
ahead. I think we'll go ahead because um, we've always got the recording for the very. Can you please let me know how to get to
yeah.
Notepad?
Well,
Sangeeta,
okay. So yeah.
if you could just
Uh,
clarify, Sangeeta, whether you mean on your computer or whether you mean how to find the download, that would
yeah.
be
So
cool.
the I'll put the download link on here as well. So we'll bring it back up. It's a bit of a long URL, but if you type in just second line there, that will also take you to it. And the WAMP server on there as well, just so people can see the link clearly. There we go. So a lot of what we're going to be doing here today is mostly I'm going to be running through how we can actually build up our HTML and our CSS structures. So if for any reason, if you're at work or you're having an issue with downloading or anything like that, there is a full set of slides that will be made available shortly after this webinar. So you will be able to quickly get yourself up to speed if you did have any issues with it at all. Of course, if you are able to follow along, that's excellent. You can ask any questions that we have going along or make any requests to what we're developing. So if I'll leave that on the screen there for just another moment or two. And James, are there any questions that need to be answered at the moment?
No, I think for the moment we will just go ahead. I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. So when we have our index.html file, and take a quick screenshot if you need to keep this, I'm about to remove it off. Okay, so in our HTML file, firstly, we want to make sure that WAMP is actually working for us. So we're just going to simply write in test. Save the file. So that's Control and S, or you can click File and Save. Once completed, we'll enter into our localhost. Now, if you just go directly to localhost, you'll get one of two things. You will either receive a view of your directories, as I am here, or in some cases, you may receive a test page itself, which will show you info. So to get to this URL in your user, you simply type in localhost. And to navigate to your news site, you type localhost/news. So with that done, we can type in /news, and we can see that our test has appeared. And we'll make that a bit bigger. There we go. So once this is being rendered under localhost/news, it means that your WAMP server is actually running. Now, if you have any issues like a red or an orange W appearing down in your taskbar, so down along here, you see mine is green, but if yours shows up with a red or an orange W, often this is caused by Skype. So Skype and WAMP run on the same port. What you need to do is start WAMP before Skype. So in this case, you simply need to shut down Skype, restart WAMP, and start Skype again. So as long as WAMP is the first thing running, you won't have any issues with compatibility between the two of them. So now that that's done, we can finally get into the nitty-gritties of HTML, and we can start defining our document. So there have been multiple versions of HTML over the past couple of years. We're up to HTML5 right now. And we need to alert the browser that's viewing the web page what version of HTML we're actually on. And with HTML5, we simply type in doctype HTML. So an exclamation mark beforehand. James, can you let me know if that's large enough for everybody to see, or do you need it a little bit bigger?
As far as I'm concerned, that's plenty big enough. I think you've got a nice font size going
Perfect.
on there. But if
Perfect.
anybody has any alternative suggestions, just pop it in. But no, it seems very clear to me.
Perfect. So yeah, if any of you have any issues seeing the size of my screen or the font on it, then please do just give us a quick alert, and we'll be able to get it. We'll be able to get it higher for you. So what we've typed in there is a doctype HTML, and that means that we are using HTML5, or more specifically XHTML. It is strict HTML where we expect it to. We're basically defining that we're going to follow the rules that W3C has put down on this, that when we open a tag, we're going to close a tag. We're going to have correct structure. We're not going to have an article within a paragraph, anything like that. We are going to follow the structure as it is put down. And we'll run through some of that structure now. So the first thing that you need to open up in any HTML document is to tell it that this is HTML, and then you also tell it what language you're working in. So I assume most of us are working in English, so lang equals en will let the browser know that we are going to be rendering in English. And as we said, anytime we open a tag, we must close it. So HTML is a lot like containers. It is not a lot of people think websites are just floating points of data, that things are just kind of skewed onto it or thrown against a wall or anything like that. And a good way to kind of think of our website is like a newspaper, as we're developing at the moment. That when you pick up a newspaper, there is always a structure. So the letters are always held on paper. That's given. But you've always got a title up near the top. Under that, you have, say, an article. The article might be accompanied by a photo. And within the article, you will have several paragraphs. That is the exact way that HTML works too. And we're going to run through that. So to open and close a tag, we'll see the greater than and less than symbols and the name of the tag, and in some cases an attribute. So in here, our attribute is stating that the language is English. So the next thing that we add is called a head tag. And again, we open and we close. And you can use the tab key to space yourself in, like so. And there is no actual real reason for this aside from tidiness. Now, this tidiness is incredibly important when you start moving on to larger projects. With this, we can see HTML here. Okay, it's indented fully. So when we go back up, we can see that HTML is also indented fully here. If we wanted to ever remove anything, like a paragraph within our web page, we'll easily be able to find where it is simply by following the breadcrumb trail that we've left through spacing. So within our head, we want to create a title. So your daily news. And again, we're following still the same basic rules here. We are opening a tag with greater than and less than signs, and in it we have a title. And that title will now be displayed at the top of our browser when we open the page. Now, by the top of the browser, I'll just show you what I mean. So it's appearing right up here. It is the title of the page. It doesn't appear on the page itself, but if somebody was to search for your page on Google, this is what they will see, your daily news. So to move on from there then, the title is all we want to put into our header tag for now. There are other things we put in the future, like character sets and, well, keywords, descriptions, things like that. But right now, we just need to focus on getting the content down. So for what the user is going to see, it is contained within a body. So everything that is within the body is going to be displayed to the actual user. And one of the first tags you will normally enter is the header for that body. So we can type in here. Again, we can type in your daily news. And just to make it look different from the title, we'll type in main page on top of it. So again, it doesn't matter what you type in here. This is simply your header for the page. And the H1 tag denotes that this is the most important header on the page. So you could also have H2, H3, H4, etc., etc. But H1 is what determines that this is the main header for this page. So we'll bring this up and we'll have a look at it. Make that a little bit smaller. There we go. So we can see that our header has rendered on it. Now, if you remember, I did state that HTML, it was about structure and conforming to that structure, and everything needs to be neat on it. And at the moment, we've put in a header, but where do we put it in? We've just kind of slapped it in the middle of nowhere. And HTML actually has a tag for anything you want in your header, and this may include images, it may include a navigation bar, and it's simply called header. So now we're going to see how we can switch things around on it. So if ever you notice that you left something out, you just type it in, cut, and paste. And sometimes you'll have to fix up your indentation a little bit. As you can see there, that is how we're meant to have it. So H1 is a member of header. Therefore, we indent it inwards, and then when we're completed, we indent back outwards. Very simple. So let's say we wanted to start writing an article, and HTML has the perfect tag for it. It's called article. Within an article, you can have several paragraphs. You can also have headers in it. You can have photos in it. Again, we could think of this like a real newspaper article. So within it then, we'll put in H2, and we'll title our article, HTML is great. And now we've given that H2, stating that this is a lower priority header than your daily news. So the headline is your daily news, and then the subheadline is HTML is great. So articles consist of paragraphs, and HTML denotes these with a P tag. So within that, we can type in anything we want. So we can simply type in, with enough practice, anyone can learn HTML. And that's one paragraph. Obviously, we can write in multiple paragraphs on this. So we'll just type in one more to show how it works. And we'll type in HTML goes great with CSS. So if we look at the structure, we have the article, which contains a header and two paragraphs inside it. And we'll have a look at how this renders for us now. As you can see, the second header is smaller than the main header, and then our paragraphs are smaller again. So let's jump back in and have a look at what we can do with this. So like we said beforehand, a lot of the time when you're reading a newspaper article, it's good to have an image that will go with it. And this is where the image tag comes into play. So we're going to find ourselves a quick image. We're going to call it, we'll bring this up in the WAMP window. So we'll call it the HTML5 logo. And we'll search for any images that we might like on here. Okay, that's a nice image. So we might decide that we want to take that one. Maybe a little big, considering the zoom that we're on. But we'll show you how to edit that with CSS, so that'll be perfect. So this is the folder that we want to, So yeah, if you go into your news folder, and you should see your index.html in there, and we'll then be able to save it in there. So we'll bring it up, copy, save image as, and as you can see, it has HTML5 logo 512 in there. So we're going to rename this to logo, just to make it a little bit easier for us to reference from our code. Again, if you're happy with HTML5 underscore logo, keep it at that if you like. But if you want to easily bring it in here, just call it logo. So typically when you have an image, you will place it underneath a header, but there is no strict rule on this. So really, whatever you prefer goes here. So the tag is image, and this again uses an attribute like our lang en. So this one is src for source. And because it's in the same folder, we simply call it the logo.png. And now this is where it gets a little bit different. A lot of you may expect me to do this, close the image tag. It needs a separate closing tag. Some tags in HTML are self-closing. So that means that within the tag itself, we can type in a slash and then close tag. Now this is very common in XHTML and in HTML5. So if anything, it just allows you to keep things a little bit tidier. As you can see, we have this on one line here. We don't even need this space. and it works perfectly. And that will load up our image. Now this is going to be quite big considering the zoom we're on, but yeah, so gigantic. And that leads us nicely into how we can use CSS to alter the size of images on a page. Now, typically, you will actually want to use an actual smaller image whenever you do see something like this. Now we're at a high zoom level, so this is why it's taking up more than the entire page, and we're at about 300% just to make this nice and clear to everybody watching. But typically, when you're building a website and you have an image of that size, it's going to be large, and I mean large just in the literal file size large. You don't want somebody downloading a 4 MB image that will take up their entire page and then just squash it down to make it look a little bit better. So we're going to start seeing how this actually works here. So style can be done in one of two ways. One is inline, and the second is with a separate file. Firstly, we're going to show how an inline CSS would work. So we can type in style equals, and then our inverted commas. Now, this again is an attribute, and the attribute is denoting that this is a style. It is from CSS. These are the rules I'm going to use for the moment. If we type in width 100 pixels, and don't forget your semicolon. It is actually not needed when you only have one style rule in here, but it is good practice to always put in a semicolon. And what we're telling this is that we want to take the width and we want to set it to 100 pixels. So we'll load this. As you can see, it's squashed right down. The height also squashed down in comparison to what we set the width to. So it was 512 by 512 pixels beforehand. Now it is 100 by 100. So inline style sheets, they don't look very neat. As you can see here, already that doesn't look too great. But what if we wanted to do multiple things with that image? What if we also wanted to set the height to something different entirely? What if we wanted to put a border around it or a shadow behind it? Or we wanted to, say, center it on the screen or anything like that? You would wind up having your CSS taking up more space than your HTML. And even more importantly than that, what if you had multiple images like this and you wanted to put the same rules on every one of them? Should you write it in every time? Definitely not. You want to create an actual style sheet that you can use. So let's bring up a new file in Notepad++. So if you click on the small text pad file up in the top left with the green plus on it, you should be able to see that there. And then we want to save as. Again, it's a blank file right now, which is perfect. And let's call it style.css. So I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so we can read it. So that's what you want to save that file as. So take your time and put that in there, and it should appear for you on the page. We'll get rid of it, or we get that a little bit smaller now. So James, just while we're getting ready to add our first style sheet, are there any questions waiting? Or if anybody wants to ask a question, you're more than welcome to at this point.
There's nothing waiting at the moment. I can let you know if and when something does come up.
Perfect. And if anybody wants me to slow down or alternatively speed up, please let me know and we can push ahead with that then. So with our style, and this is done quite differently to HTML. So as you remember, our HTML, we were defining tags everywhere. We defined our article, we defined H2, we defined an image, paragraph, another paragraph, etc. So what is the reason for doing this apart from just bona fide structure? And another one is that the rules of CSS actually follow this perfectly. So take our body tag, for instance. The way that we can edit this in CSS by typing in body, and then we can put in any CSS rule we want in here. So let's assume we want it to be, let's make the text white, and let's make the background color black. Now you'll notice that color is spelled in the Americanized way, and unfortunately that's something that everybody across the continent will need to get used to. HTML and CSS, so on, they use the Americanized spellings. So you'll have to get used to spelling words without use. So we've set the color to white and the background color to black. And now we need to actually tell our HTML file where where the CSS file is, alert it that we need to actually see it. And this is done with the link tag. So again, this uses attributes to determine what it's looking for. So we put in the reference, and that is a style sheet. And then we put in the href, sorry, it's link relevance, yep, or relative. And then the href, you can type in style.css. And again, there's a self-closing tag, so we just put in a slash and a close tag on it. And now this will load in every rule we define in our CSS. So we'll do a quick look on that there. Perfect. We have inverted the colors with practically one line of CSS code. Now, as you can see, our inline CSS is still working, even though we have defined a new CSS file. Inline CSS actually takes precedence over anything that you put into a style sheet. So if you state something in your HTML, you explicitly state a style that you want to follow, which in this case is the width is 100 pixels, then that is gospel for your HTML. Even if there's something in your CSS file which will contradict it, your HTML file will always take precedence over it. So how can we convert this into CSS so we can keep it all in one place? Well, we can get rid of the style tag. Not needed anymore. We are using a style sheet. Let's simply type in image and width 100 pixels, and don't forget your semicolon. So in CSS files, even more importantly than HTML, you always need the semicolon. If you leave this out at any point, the browser can sometimes fix it for you. It will assume what you meant to do, but in other cases, it might assume incorrectly. So it is always good to put in the semicolon. It's a way of stating that you are finished with this particular rule or line of code, and that is standard across the industry with Java and with, say, PHP, with C#, with C++, every language, you terminate a line with a semicolon. So let's just check and make sure that everything looks the same, and it does. Perfect. So we've moved our rule out of our HTML and into our CSS. Now, let's see what we can do about inserting a little bit more into our HTML. So we have an article in here, but should we define that in any particular constraint? As in, should it be a member of something? It is certainly different from the header. The header is it's a completely different section, and we want to make an easy distinction in our code between the article and the header. So a new tag that has come in for HTML5 is actually called main. If you see that, and there used to be other ways of doing that which involved dividers, but now you've got the main tag. So create your main tags here, and we can cut and paste our article into it. Cut. So again, you want everything within your article, and you might need to fix a little bit of indentation while you're in there, because we have indented one level further. One of the benefits for this is if we wanted to write another article in here. So let's just write a really quick one. We just put an article and article. And in here we can use header 2 again, but let's consider that this is a news story of lesser importance. So we'll use H3 for this one to make it a little bit smaller again. And we'll just type in CSS is great too, and close off the header tag. So we put in another paragraph, and we'll type in that CSS is also easy with enough practice. And we close that paragraph, giving us a second article. So let's say that we wanted to change the style of both of these articles, but we did not want to change the style of the header. We want the header to be black text on white, and we want both articles to be white text on black. So very simple. We can now swap out body for article. Or we can swap it even for main, as we want to change everything within the main. So let's have a look at main. And as you can see, our main has retained the white text on black, and our header is black text on white. So absolutely everything within the body has been changed, but because the header is no longer part of the body, that remains outside of the rules. So let's think of how we can actually use this more to our benefit with all the rules we have put in place. So we have two different article tags, and we also have separate paragraph tags which belong under the article. So what if we wanted, say, paragraphs to appear in blue and yellow for any reason, and we wanted to keep every other rule we've built so far? So we simply type in P for paragraph, color is yellow, and the background color is blue. So we'll do a quick check on this. And as you can see, our paragraphs have updated. So if we were to try and do that in inline CSS, we would have to write that in for 3 separate lines on it. And likely when you do start developing your larger websites, you're going to have a lot more than 3 paragraphs on any one page. So you can imagine how it would be if the Wall Street Journal had to go and type in separate CSS rules for every paragraph that they wrote. Firstly, the website would be several megabytes large because they're typing in so much data separately. And next to that, then, their editors would probably go insane, sitting down and writing in the same 2 rules for every single paragraph. But with CSS, we can easily reference every single paragraph or our entire main, anything like that, and of course, images. But what happens if you actually do want one paragraph to be a little bit different? Well, there are 2 tags that we use for actually specifying rules for HTML and CSS. That is our ID and our class. So an ID is giving something a unique identifier. So this is an attribute that you can type in on any HTML tag, practically any HTML tag. Any one that you will see, you will be able to type in an ID on it. So you type in ID, your inverted commas, and let's type this in here for, say, my new ID. And it's actually a good idea to type in capital letters in each one of those, which is called camel casing. Just makes it a little bit easier for you to read. So now we've given that paragraph a unique ID. Now if we refresh the page, nothing will change because we haven't given that ID any rule. But let's say we do want to give it a rule. We want that particular paragraph to look different than the rest. So we named it my new ID. And note that we have to use a hash symbol before that, or a pound symbol, depending on which country you hail from. And then we have to type in the name exactly as we put it in our HTML. So we have an uppercase N and an uppercase I. And now we can give that its own rule. So let's decide that we want this to be red. And the background color, we'll make that green. So as you can see, we've updated one tag in our HTML without touching any of the others because we pointed to it by a unique identifier. So second to that, then, we have a class. So one issue here is that, let's say we wanted the exact same rules for this paragraph to be applied to this paragraph, except we did not want it applied onto this paragraph. So we wanted 2. Now, one thing we could do is we could cover the article. So we could give the article an ID. So we'll call that my new article. We can get rid of this ID because it's not needed anymore. Of course, you can leave it in. It won't make any difference. And now that we have my new ID there, we just switch that to my new article. And this should then update the entire article, as we can see. Not very pretty, but it works. Now, one very important thing here, notice how the paragraphs did not change in this one. And that's because of the CSS rules of, well, how explicit you are in referencing what you want to change. So this is, again, why these indents are fantastic, because we can see what belongs to what is more explicitly referenced. So we have an article, and that has 2 paragraphs beside it. So when our style sheet goes through all the rules we've set up, it's seeing the article and saying, okay, well, this article needs to be red text on a green background. But more explicitly within it, we have a paragraph. And the paragraphs are directly referenced by our style sheet. So our paragraphs may be within an article, but our paragraphs are the most explicit thing that we are actually referencing in here. So when it runs through the style sheet, this is what takes precedence, the actual paragraph tag. And notice its position in the text document. It doesn't matter if this is on top or below. CSS does not care how you structure it in any way. It cares about its own rules. CSS stands for a cascading style sheet. And that's exactly what the name means. You are cascading through the rule sets based on how explicit or how direct a command is. So typing in or changing the rules for the article entirely will not change the paragraph. So how can we change both of these paragraphs with one rule? Well, we can actually be explicit with it. We could type in my new article P, and in this we are stating that any article that we run through, if there is a paragraph within it, we want to change it. So let's just type in color purple, background color white. So we have explicitly changed it. We've stated that these paragraphs are within the container for the ID of my new article. It is explicit. It is explicitly stating these are to change, but because this paragraph is within a different article, not named my new article, CSS will ignore it. It does not want to change that. So let's say that we want to change our bottom and our top paragraphs. So the rules are a little bit different on this one. So we're just going to get rid of that one there. So again, we want to change the paragraphs for with enough practice, anyone can learn HTML, and the paragraph for CSS is also easy with enough practice. So we can't use an ID. An ID is for a unique identifier, and if we have two of them, they're not unique. If we want to reference more than one thing, we use what's called a class. So if we type in a class of new paragraphs, and we also need to apply this down here. Class equals new paragraphs. And if you use Notepad++, it will actually cop that this is a class, and it will allow you to autofill that as well. So if we dive in here, instead of using the pound sign or the hash sign, we just type in a dot. So a dot signifies a class file. So we name that, yeah, new paragraphs. So just type in new paragraphs. And now we can give this any settings that we've given to anything before. So let's assume that we want this one to be blue text on a yellow background. And as we can see, our rules came in perfectly on it. So we now have a class file which is able to reference anything. And we can apply that class file to anything we want. Now, that is just a simple basic structure of how HTML and CSS can work. These are fundamentals. As you can see, what we're building at the moment, we're not going to be seeing this going up for millions on a Kickstarter or anything like that. This is fundamental. But these fundamentals are incredibly important for moving ahead with HTML and CSS. Have a look into some of the rules that are on this now. All we've really looked at is color, background color, and then our structure. So our HTML is most certainly the most learning we've done today. The CSS we've done has mostly been just about learning a little bit of the rule sets. We're going to change that up a little bit now and try to make this website a little bit prettier. So absolutely everything in our page falls under HTML, and then everything that the user can see falls under body. So let's add in a new tag. So I don't know about any of you, but I'm not a big fan of this particular font. So let's type in the font family tag. Let's say we want it to be Tahoma. And if we don't have the Tahoma font available, then just pick anything that is sans serif. And let's refresh the page. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. We've gotten rid of the serif text, which is a step up for anybody. But now we'll start moving forward from that then. We want to, let's see, we've got a lot of borders going on here. It'd be nice if we could actually center our web page. And we could do this in the body as well. So we've put in a margin left of auto and a margin right of auto, again in our body. And just follow along for now. I'll be able to explain fully what these mean in a quick moment. So now we've gotten rid of these ugly borders that are going left and right. There's two ways we can do a quick center on this. One is a little bit cheaty. Text, align, center. Sorry, I've got a start bar stuck on me. There we go. We've gotten everything centered. And it starts looking a little bit better. But why is this cheaty? The main reason is that we're telling it to align all text in the center. That is not text, but it will follow the rules that we lay down on it. So the alignment that we did beforehand with our margin left and margin right to auto, that is basically stating that we want the page to take up the entire screen. What if we wanted to start floating things around on it? So let's say for this image, what if we wanted this to actually be up near this, anything like that? What would we use for it? So under our image tag, which is a little bit down the screen, explicitly tell it to float up to the left. Now we've got it nicely in line with an unintended nice graphical effect below it as well. So it looks a little bit like your old retro computers, your ZX Spectrum, showing the full color palette available to it. So as we can see then, the minute that we started floating things next to it, it wasn't centered anymore. If we wanted it centered and we also wanted it to float things up next to it, we'd have to look into some of the more advanced rule sets that are on it. So there is the margin left and the margin right, which we can, again, this is quite, this is a little bit of a hacky way to do it, but it certainly does work. So we've put in padding left of 300 pixels on it. We'll show how to move it. So certainly not in the center, but we're getting it close. So that's how you're able to define things by a pixel ratio. You can also put in 50% in there, anything like that. You can also put in a margin left that will take up the same amount of space on it. So moving on from there then, how do we actually start making this look like the website we want it to be? Let's take a quick look at it. Oh, and if at any point you find that you refresh the page and nothing has changed, hold down Shift or Control and then hit F5. This will do a force refresh on your CSS style sheet. So I see we have a question there. Is it better to use pixels or percent? So there are ways that websites mainly work, and I apologize if this seems a little bit off target, but I am getting to your question with it. That is an important question though. But when you develop any website, you have to decide on one of two things. Do you want it to be static or do you want it to be liquid? And there's also responsive, which you will look at further down the line. Static means that this website is going to look the same. As in, this is 1000 pixels wide. I don't care what you're using, it is 1000 pixels wide. Sometimes there might be a little border on the sides of it for people with bigger screens, but that's about as far as it will go. You're stating that this is a 1000 pixel website. So when you move on from that then, you might start thinking, like, what if somebody comes onto my website using a mobile device? What if they have a smaller window? Anything like that. And at this point, we start looking at what's called a liquid design. And this one often uses percentages. So I'm going to give you a quick example of this. So let's decide that, let's pick, you know what, we can actually do it with the full page. If we do it at the moment, it will be quite liquid. It will, you can see it starts moving in on top of itself. And with the HTML we have at the moment, this may actually be the best that we can do on that, that your default HTML is actually liquid. As you can see, it does move and shape itself, but you might want to put in a maximum size on it. You may not want people to say, be able to squish it so much that HTML is great jumps down onto two different lines. So let's have a look at that one. Where is our HTML is great? I believe that was a header tag. Yep, H2. So we put in H2. Now we put in a minimum width, and let's say this has to be 600 pixels at any point. We may also need to do this for the parent as well. We'll check that in a second. So the minimum should be 600 pixels. If we scroll it down, yeah, we can see that it is now the minimum. Instead of squashing in, it has actually gone off the screen. It's made a little scroll bar at the bottom. Now, you might wonder, why would I ever want to do that? Why would I want to force somebody to see something in 600 pixels? Now, at the moment, there is no real reason for it. We simply have text and we have an image. But what if you had something a bit more advanced? Let's say tomorrow you are hired by Facebook and you're working on a new messenger tool. What happens if somebody scrolls their window very small on Facebook? Well, and JavaScript to create little tabs that you click through, which is excellent. But they never, ever limit or never squish the size of the actual text boxes themselves. You can imagine if you had 20 chats open on Facebook and they all decided that they needed to fit in the browser window no matter what. So they all squashed on top of themselves, and you're looking at, about 100 pixels wide per chat box. That's something you never want with something like that. Sometimes you want to use pixels. Other times, like at the moment with the more basic stuff we have going on, especially, you want to use liquidity. You want people to be able to render it on any screen that they want. Of course, there are limits to it. I mean, you could state that, if you're going below 200 pixels, then it's getting a little bit ridiculous. Nobody's going to view it on that size screen, especially not anymore. Not even the most low-end smartphones have 200 pixels of a limit on them. So typically when you are making a hard limit, it's generally about 600 pixels, sometimes as low as 480. But any modern smartphone is normally rendering at least at 720p, which is 720 progressive scan, which is 1280 pixels wide. So really, if you're going below 1280, then it doesn't really make any sense as compared to what kind of devices you're targeting. So are there any other questions while we're here on general CSS or anything like that? If anybody wants to chime in, or even on HTML. So we have about 10 minutes left, so we might as well use it on any questions that we may have. Or we can just jump on and do a little bit more.
There are,
Yeah, sorry, there's one there for Windows servers. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So, yeah, can I use WAMP to publish a website to any server, or is it for Windows servers only? Well, WAMP is for Windows. So this is actually a section on the slides that you will be receiving afterwards. So there are multiple different types of servers. There's LAMP, there's LEMP, there's mean, there's WAMP, there's WIMP. There's a lot of different ones. So WIMP is actually the most popular on Windows at the moment because that is your C# server, your .NET server. It's for Windows IIS, and then it's for MS SQL, and then at the bottom then at your P you've also got a little bit of PHP coming into it. So it can be a little bit kind of exhausting when you start seeing all of the different types of servers out there, but a lot of them tie into each other. So WAMP is Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So Apache is the actual server that you're using at the moment. That is what's serving up the web pages to you. So when you make a request to any website running Apache, then it's Apache that will reply to you and state, yes, this is the website, this is the resource that you were looking for. It sends it back to you, to your browser, and you render it. So you're on Windows at the moment. So a lot of servers run on Linux. Most of the servers online run on Linux. So you might install WAMP and be thinking, well, when am I ever going to use this? WAMP is purely for development in most people's opinions, certainly in my opinion. When you're pushing onto a Linux server, it uses LAMP, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. And they work 100% the same. Anything you build on WAMP can be instantly converted to work on LAMP. It is a drag and drop process for the vast majority of it. So you would not install WAMP on a Windows server, or, well, sorry, you would install it on a Windows server if you wanted it to. You would not install WAMP on a Linux server, but you would install LAMP. And similarly, there's also MAMP, which is the same again, but for Mac OS. So the technologies that we're using are all the exact same here. The only thing that's changing is the first letter being the operating system, but they all work 100% the same. What you're learning here right now can be used on MAMP, on LAMP, or really this can be used on the majority of stacks because they all support HTML and CSS. The important part of the equation is PHP and MySQL, which we may look at a good bit further down the line. And those are our, well, PHP is our scripting language and MySQL is our database language. So I hope that answers your question. If not, please let me know. I see we have another one on here. What's the meaning of HTML? So it's hypertext markup language. So it is, I suppose it's nearly self-contained in what it calls itself, hypertext markup language. You are looking at hypertext. It's a little bit of an obsolete reference to give it, as hypertext used to simply mean text that can be changed. And in HTML, we've come quite a long way from just changing a little bit of text. But one thing that does stay true to that is the markup language. So everything we have been doing has been in a markup language, as in we are marking the actual tags that we're putting in for use on it. We've got our header, we've got a body. Inside our body, then we've got articles, we've got a main section. It is all simply markup. CSS is also, it is known as a markup language. It is more of a structure language. It's more semantics when it comes down to that. But typically, when you're looking at markup languages, they are static. So what static means is that you're not going to use HTML to build a calculator. It simply won't happen. HTML does not have the ability to do anything with a calculator. PHP can build a calculator. MySQL can sort of be used to, well, it can be used to calculate. If you're using just raw SQL, you certainly can use it as a calculator. Other languages like C#, Java, JavaScript, jQuery, Python, Ruby, all of them, you can use them to program. You can make things that are dynamic. Your HTML is mostly static. Now, I say mostly in that if you've looked at a lot of websites nowadays, yes, they are still built with the HTML markup, but a lot of the logic can be done through JavaScript or jQuery, or there might be a PHP script, running on top of it as well. There might be a PHP driver it's running into. And that's at the point then where you're getting to scripted languages. They're very dynamic, as in this page could look entirely different anytime you load it based on the time of day you visit or any input variable you enter with it as well. So as far as it goes with a markup language, you are thinking static, that this will not change unless I explicitly change it. So I hope that assists with that one. I'm not entirely sure of that question, i.e. not collapsible, and somebody had an issue with indents in HTML in Notepad++. Okay, so if you are having an issue with indents, normally the tab key will indent you inwards. But a second way of doing that, and this is, if any of you are looking to go into development as a professional career or anything like that in the future, this is an argument you will have for the rest of your life, should you use spaces or tabs. So if you can't use a tab for whatever reason, you can tap the space bar 4 times, and that is considered to be also a correct way of spacing your code. And the jury is out on which one is correct. They are both completely, it's 50% usage at both sides of it. The only time it is incorrect to use one of them is if somebody has already started writing it in the opposite way. So if you walk into a job and everything is written with tab spacing and you type in 4 spaces instead, you will probably get pulled up over it or eaten by a senior developer.
Yeah, the dev team over here fully against tabbing, so it's all spacing.
Oh, monsters. So, let's see, do we have anything else on this? Sorry, so we have one. Please advise. That's from Ben, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry about that.
Oh,
I've answered that. I deleted his previous question because he just wanted to get a link to the recording. And for anybody who wants a link to the recording, email me at info@webinarsteam. You can also check the email that you will have all received for a link to the webinar. You'll be able to find it, but the recording will probably only be uploaded in the next kind of 1 to 2 days. So don't expect it probably in the coming hours. Probably 24 hours from now, you'll be able to find it. So yeah, if you don't have that link, just email me at info@webinarsteam.com.
perfect. So I'm going to give you all 2 different links. These are also included in the slides. Now, the structure there actually worked quite well without the slides. The slides themselves, we weren't actually going to get to this level of the actual scripting in the first lecture we were doing. So it may be better that we continue with this structure and distribute the slides afterwards. That the slides that you're going to get on it, it does cover everything we've done, but it covers it in much greater detail. So some of you may have been comfortable following at that speed. If not, we will definitely just stick to using slides to slow it down in the future. But if you were comfortable with it, and you can use the slides then to further your knowledge on it, then that's also perfect. So if you want to give your feedback to the guys on that, that would be great. And
Yeah.
I will bring up,
Well,
it's called sorry, go ahead.
sorry. No. Go ahead.
And so these are just two URLs I'm going to give you. So I'll have both of them maximized in just a moment. This is W3 Schools, which is a great resource for picking up your basics in HTML and CSS, and kind of solidifying the fundamentals that you've learned and expanding on them. So if you were looking to learn a little more before we jump into the next lecture, and obviously it is not mandatory, we will be assuming that people did not have the time to do this, but you will find yourself with a leg up, that you will be able to learn more on your own time if you're able to jump into HTML and CSS on top of that. So for our next time, we're going to start looking at taking the website that we've just built and making it look like a website that we'd like to visit ourselves. Again, we won't be looking at anything that will be going on to Kickstarter for millions or appearing in the Wall Street Journal, but we will be able to get it start looking like websites that you yourself would normally visit. So that will be for next time. But if you do want to get a leg up on it, the two URLs which are currently on screen, and they'll also be distributed with the slides, they will be able to bring you through a lot more of there are hundreds of different HTML tags and CSS commands, stuff like that. And if you want to see how any of them in particular work, that is a great way to do it, especially with the new site we've already started building. You can continue to build on that.
Great.
Okay, so yeah.
So I think that that's probably a good time to end because yeah, I mean I have a couple of things to do before 6 o'clock.
No
But
problem.
no, it's been great. So thank you very much. I'm really sorry to everybody about the delay at the beginning. That was as I say, it was sod's law. It's of
Yeah,
course, if anything technological comes up, we experience technical issues. Um, you
even
can't
worse
really
when you're
predict
a
these
computer
kinds of
scientist.
things. So yeah, I apologise for that, but hopefully you all learned as much as I did and enjoyed it as much as I did. And we're looking forward again to next week when we'll be joined by Owen again, and he'll be able to kind of take things further through. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
for if anybody has any questions that they can think of that they'd like to ask Owen before the webinar or they'd like answered in the next one, again, just email me at info@webinarsteam and I can pass those on.
yep,
But
that
for
sounds
now,
great.
unless you have anything else to say, Owen, I think that we can end there.
No, I'll echo your apology for the delay in myself getting on. The PC I normally work off, my work PC is still stuck on a black screen at the moment, so I assume I have a night of taking out my hard drive ahead of me. So,
Lots of
but
backing up
next
to
week,
do.
yeah. But
Okay.
next week, if you do want to, if you also do want to comment towards James or any of the guys, and let them know if you would prefer this type of hands-on approach, a practical approach as we just did, or if you would prefer to go through slides and have me read off them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Let them know and we can decide on the exact structure we will take on it next week then. But either way, the slides will be built either side of it. So
Yeah.
you may find it more beneficial to get a full hour of hands-on work and then getting the slides to use, say, afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, as is always the case, any and all feedback is hugely appreciated, and we can try and kind of fold it into the next webinar. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And if
thanks
there's
very much. Thanks,
anything, yeah.
Owen, and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll be back at the same time next week with a follow up to this. So enjoy your week and see you later, everybody.
Yep, and thank you very much for having me. We'll speak soon, guys. The best of luck with your programming endeavors.
Thanks, Owen. Bye bye, everybody.